Hey everybody, welcome back to another session of Study Sesh brought to you by Boston Broadcasts, where we are unlocking snippets of knowledge for you on different modules and different topics. And as always, we are seated with some of the coolest lecturers. I say super cool today because he looks like he's all the way from Havana. We're awesome and very excited to have back with us Cameroon Shan Makanaki. Cameroon, welcome back. Thank you so much for making the time. Today, we're talking design thinking. What exactly is design thinking?
Thanks for having me again, Sush. Obviously, I've got my hat on because design thinking is about creativity, innovation, and actually coming up with something for the user that the user actually can use, putting ourselves in the shoes of the user. And also getting rid of all of our assumptions when understanding the user. So design thinking is something that I argue which is fairly new, but a lot of people in practice say it's been there for ages, especially engineers withdrawn. But what they do is they combine data analytics with design thinking. But let me make it simple. Let's start at the beginning. What is design thinking? So design thinking is a process where we use the micro and the macro cycle. It's got nothing to do with economics, so don't get stressed. This is just a design thinking process, and it is a form of problem solving, but it's more than just problem solving. It has its own jargon, its own processes. When we create a problem statement, for example, I will ask 20 questions. Why? And then I will go, how? And then I might create, how might we explain design thinking to Sush and the whole world so that people can understand exactly what it is, right? So there's a lot of thinking going into design thinking, and you are designing your thoughts to deal with a lot of other people. Forget about your ego. You're going to be brainstorming with a lot of people. Another example I want to touch on is the debanking. So in terms of the banks like FNB, Standard Bank, etc., nowadays they have used design thinking, if you like, to make the banking industry more digital. So they are going away from the traditional model of banking and moving into a more digital age. And design thinking is a process which is human-centered to enable us to understand the user with empathy, and then obviously create a persona, and then use the processes of creativity, ideation, observing, understanding, defining point of view, to then create an idea for a prototype and a prototype so that we can actually solve the problem. And where I think design thinking has an edge is because it's user-centered. So we are literally more than actually just thinking about put yourself in the shoes of the user. When we ask questions, one thing that's important in design thinking is empathy. Not sympathy, but empathy, and really understanding what the user says. And then we do go beyond. We consider the user's feelings. How do they speak? What do they say? What do they hear? And then we use processes like one process that might be interesting to listeners is the AEIOU process. And this is when we review the persona. A persona is a construction of the user where we find out what are the gains, what are the pains, what are the jobs to be done, and so much information about the user. Now, a user is not necessarily just one individual because that persona can apply to millions of individuals. But we don't just dump prototypes and products on people in the market. We seek to understand the user with empathy so that we can fulfill a need.
We're unpacking design, and we're engineered by design, and I love that it's such a collaborative effort. When you were chatting just now, Cameroon, it felt like we were in a think tank. We're all trying to come up with amazing solutions because we are reading the room. We're looking at where we're going. We're at the forefront of digitization. And when you gave the example of the banks, if we're not ahead in digitization in how we use our apps, how we actually use banking, we're going to be behind. And I think that's one of the things that can actually assist students. How does it assist or actually assist students of all disciplines when we look at design thinking?
That's a lovely question, and thanks for that, Sush. So, design thinking is not just about assisting one particular individual to come up with an innovation to change the world in one industry. You can use design thinking in almost all factors of life. And in my opinion, even in your personal life, in dating or whatever, you can use design thinking because of that empathy factor, understanding the needs of the user. So in terms of how is it going to assist students, students are thrown in the deep end after they graduate into many different companies where they get internships or they even get a proper job and they have to swim in the deep end. And if they don't have the skills to actually equip themselves to solve a problem, they are going to drown and sink. That's why in design thinking, we embrace problems. We love problems. We want problems. Bring in all the problems on planet Earth. It's all good because that's what it's about. And in terms of helping, when we go through the various cycles, like the macro or the micro cycle, but the processes, so we seek to understand the user. Now, when we want to understand, we need to also understand what is the problem of a user. So if we've got a student who has a problem with referencing, before we even get there, we create a problem statement after diverging and coming up with multiple ideas about asking the user about the problem to deepen the problem and make the problem bigger, because there's all sorts of problems, wicked, real, easy to define. So by diverging and brainstorming throughout a whole universe, we then can make the problem massive. Once we've done that, we converge, and then we ask how questions, and then we bring the problem down. We narrow it, even though we're encompassing all aspects of the problem. We then narrow, create the problem statement to deal with everything. Then we review the persona with the AEIOU process: activities, environment, interaction, objects, and user. And then we apply these different factors by asking questions to do with activities and getting the answers of the user, so that we can see not just in terms of empathy, how does the user feel about the problem? How do they actually action? What are the activities? What is their environment? And then we define our point of view on the problem. Once we've defined the point of view on the problem, we ideate and we brainstorm. When we brainstorm, which is part of the microcycle, there's a bit of an overlap on the macro cycle. And this macro cycle can really help students now in any problem, because we are going to ideate and come up with super cool ideas, ridiculous ideas, but we actually use them because they could be the next innovation. On top of that, we have an idea called a dark horse. So for example, if I'm going to solve a problem of creating a cemetery, right, a new digital age cemetery where nobody has died, how would I create that? By taking away, if I'm creating an IT desk where I'm assisting information technology people with problems, where there is no problems in relation to IT, how would I design it? The idea that you wouldn't always think about, that you wouldn't consider, that people would say are ridiculous, nonsensical, illogical. These are ideas we use and we brainstorm in ideation. Obviously, we refine, and then we get lots of people together and they put their ideas together. And then we combine, we use Scamper, which I'll talk about later, a form of brainstorming, in order to create an amazing prototype that actually solves the problem.
I think you would agree, Cameroon, that there are many essential steps that need to be considered when you go about creating a prototype. And immediately when I think prototype, I think about things like the Transformers. I don't know where my brain just happens to go to robotics. But how does one go about creating a prototype?
Excellent question, Sush. And in my opinion, again, I think the prototype is the core of design thinking. However, in order to get to that point, as I've illustrated earlier, we need to go through these processes and actually action them so that we can enter into the stage of ideation. Ideation is when we are going to come up with so many ideas to create a prototype. Now, a prototype is something that we create to solve the problem. So it is part of the solution. It is not a demo model, or you need to bring in pieces of metal or copper or glue, or bring in a whole tractor or an aeroplane and start operating aeronautically. Definitely not.
Yeah.
You can use bits of plasticine and plastic and sellotape and paper and sticky notes and anything that you actually have around you that you can use. My students use chairs. You can even do drawings, you know. One of the ways we actually draw a prototype is using the boxing method, drawing on a box, okay? But a prototype shows you how the particular solution to the problem will actually function or look like in real life. So if you want to go to town and create, you can, but you don't need to. But in terms of how to create a prototype, once we've gone through the problem statement that I'll talk about later, and then actually we've identified a problem, we've defined our point of view, and we have a persona. We understand the user. So we know more and more information about the person who's going to use this prototype by understanding the pains, the gains, the jobs to be done. Just to touch on that briefly, because I didn't earlier. The pains are things that the user has a problem with. The gains are things that the user has in their life that are advantageous or to do with the problem. The jobs to be done, our jargon is when I want to, so I can. So for example, if I'm taking a picture right now of you to obviously go to Checkers and advertise your love of pasta, just kidding, withdrawn. But if I take a picture of you, that's the when. I want to edit these pictures so I can post them on Instagram and obviously get feedback and views, and people will tell me how good my pictures are. Yeah. Those are the jobs to be done, part of the persona. Now, once we've got all those things, now we go into ideation. Ideation is important because we don't just think about ideas, and design thinking is only good with other people. You can't do it on your own. You need to love your ideas, forget your ideas, and leave your ideas. Love them, leave them, forget them, because people will not agree with your ideas. People will cut them in half. People will combine these sticky notes we use in order to design our thoughts to get the correct idea to solve the problem. You can also use benchmarking. So for example, if you're not creating something from new, but you're innovating on Showmax or Disney, trying to make it better for the user, then you can look at similar ones like Prime Video, like Hula, right? Like other particular service providers that do the similar thing to Disney or Showmax. After you've done that, then you come up with those crazy ideas and the dark horse, and then you innovate, you refine your ideas, and then you create an idea of a prototype. Then you get someone in the group who's maybe good at drawing. They don't need to be an artist. Guys, don't be afraid. You don't need to be Picasso. You just draw your prototype. This is how it's going to look. These are the functions. This wire is going to go here. This is what the app is going to do. It's going to create a hologram that is going to project into the atmosphere, so I don't have to touch it. I can just touch in front of me. You know, create something brand new in terms of connecting with the app. Maybe the screen opens in front of me and I can watch without a device. And maybe this is going to sound ridiculous. Maybe I can have a chip in my brain, a Neuralink that Musk has created, that actually projects a hologram from my retina outside into the environment, and now I can watch without needing a cell phone, right? So we then come up with a prototype. And in terms of coming up with it, once we've created it and we've gone through the ideas, there are so many. We're going to look at the functions. What do they actually do for the user? It is human-centered. It is user-centered. But that is the process. The ideation leads to the creation. And then we work together as a team, combining our ideas and creating a prototype which is designed to solve the problem for the user.
Cameroon, one of the things we discussed at the outset of unpacking design thinking about, we discussed the different steps and what is critical in the design thinking process. One of the things you mentioned is a problem statement. Okay, how do you create a problem statement? What is a problem statement?
Thank you so much, Sush. This is my favorite part of the day. Okay. I love problem statements. In fact, when I'm teaching design thinking to my students, and I always tell them, I wish I could teach you the problem statement first, because for me personally as well, it's the most interesting. Because I think people, they operate, just like in law, according to Kelson, on the transcendental epistemological postulate. Remember, I told you what that means. You need to go beyond what you have learned to make clear what you assume. Forget about what you know and what you've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to know ever since birth, and go beyond what you think you know to make sure that you can see your own assumptions. And then once you see what your stereotype, your sexism, racism, your prejudices, all those things, go beyond them, go beyond your assumptions so you can actually create and learn something new. Now, this is what the problem statement does. Once we get a problem, so people make an assumption, first of all, oh, we have a problem. Oh, here's a quick solution. Oh, problem solved. That's not the way it works in design thinking. It is a lot bigger. It's a universe. And we're going to extrapolate crazy brainwaves in order to really understand the problem. So what I usually do, one of the exercises, or one of them that I do in terms of the problem statement, is we look at, a problem, and it can be any problem. And obviously, I never let students volunteer personal problems unless they want to. And if they want to, they've got to give permission, and we give a disclaimer. But if you just give a general problem, like, for example, a very simple problem, the problem about people who must stop typing on their phone once they're driving. Because when they drive, people are on their phone to their academic manager or director, or they have a meeting, and it's a complete disregard for the human race, because then there's an accident, et cetera, et cetera. So, in terms of this, here's a problem. How can we communicate on our cell phone to our directors or management or people without breaking the law, disrupting other people by slowing down, and more important, in terms of a cognitive construction, psychologically, is that it is one of the things that you can actually lose control of your vehicle when you're looking on your phone. Psychological studies have showed, in terms of your cognition, it's hampered when you're looking like this on your phone. Right? It's the one thing that you can actually really lose control. So here's the problem. So then we need to define the problem statement, but we don't just do it right away. There's a process. So let's say, for example, Sush, you are the person, right, who has the problem with texting whilst driving. I would start to ask you questions. So an example is, I'm going to ask you a question right now and put you on the spot. Okay. So Sush, why do you type when you drive?
Sometimes it's an emergency. Sometimes I'm worried about, has my daughter arrived home? My voice note system wasn't working, so I quickly want to text so that someone can see it. My husband's always in a meeting and he might not be able to listen to my voice note, but if I text, he'll be able to see it quickly.
Why do you think you need to text while your car is moving instead of stopping your car?
Great question, but because I'm in motion and I'm in traffic and I can't get out of the lane, and because it's immediate and I need to get it done, I think I'm prioritizing incorrectly. I know I'm wrong.
Now, straight away, by me asking these why questions, and believe me, I don't just ask 2, I will ask 10 or 20. I'm making the problem bigger now. Now I can see Sush doesn't just have a problem typing when she's driving. She's worried about her family, picking someone up. She's worried about work, her husband. All these factors are now coming in. And there's anxiety, there's worry. It's making the problem bigger. So then after that, I will ask you a how question. So Sush, how do you think you could stop typing whilst you drive and avoid some of these issues?
Maybe preparation and time management. If I knew what time she was going to be dropped off, or making sure my husband at exactly 4:30 sets an alarm so he knows to keep an eye out for her messaging, or seeing if the bus notification sends him something. So maybe planning in advance might help me.
Now, the interesting thing is, just like most logical people, Sush, no disrespect, your mind goes there to a solution. I never asked you about giving me solutions. We are nowhere near prototype stage. I just wanted to know how might you think. But you did give me that information, and I'm now starting to converge. And I ask you more how questions, and then I create a statement. So the problem statement now could be something like this. How might we help Sush to stop typing and avoid anxiety and improve her time management and planning so that she is safe and effective in a working environment? Now you've got a proper problem statement that is encompassing a lot of the problem, and you will see that the problem is bigger, and now we're understanding your needs more, even though we only asked 2. But as I said, I would ask you 10 whys and 15 hows, and I would jot them down and create something even better. And that is how you create a problem statement.
That is a good problem to have, Cameroon. I am so happy that I've understood this and you've unpacked it so beautifully. This is what it's all about. Design thinking. It's about unpacking and unlocking knowledge right here with Boston Broadcasts. Cameroon, as we wrap up design thinking, I always think about, when you go into a lecture hall, you're sitting in class, you've learned this theory, you understand, but how does it work for a student practically in the world, understanding design thinking?
That's a great question as well, because what's really important is taking that knowledge academically and integrating it into a practical working environment so that it is work integrated learning. But more important than all that academic interpretation of practical learning is a simple thing. When you go into practice and you're on an internship, as I did state earlier, a lot of our students or students in general feel like they can't cope, and you find that they leave that internship after 3 months instead of the full year, which makes their CV look bad, or they decide not even to put that experience on their CV, which is not a good thing, because all the experience you gain needs to be reflected on your CV. Okay. Now, in terms of the internship, when you get an internship, it is an opportunity to get exposure in an area. And if you're lucky enough, you get exposure in what you're passionate about. If not, you're still getting exposure in something that is going to equip you and give you skills going forward into the future, which is just indispensable in terms of your learning, your development, and your progress in life. So design thinking, and just by applying and learning the whole process, understand, observe, define your point of view, ideate, prototype, test, implementation. Once you've gone and understood design thinking, you're not just going to give up and say, I don't understand this. This is a problem. I don't think I'll be able to deal with this. I think I want to go get another job now. No, I'm not happy at work. No, this person, this person, that. You don't have those problem-solving skills. And even if you're a person who is solution-orientated and you want to solve the problem, you might not have a special method of actually being professional in serving the problem. You know what they say, professional closeness, personal distance. A lot of people don't understand that in the work environment. But by using design thinking, you can professionally solve the problem. And that problem might not just be practical. It might be a people problem, interacting and working with people you don't understand because you misinterpret them or they misinterpret you. By looking at the problem, making the problem bigger, looking at all aspects of the problem, defining your problem, and then understanding the persona, your persona, or the person in general with the problem that you are taught in design thinking. So for example, this is my gains. This is my pains. These are the jobs that need to be done. This is the problem statement. Now I'm going to go through the macro and the micro cycle and understand the problem, and maybe even create a prototype to actually solve this problem that I can use at work. And not just that, now I've created a prototype that is helping me solve the problem. Now I can even go and sell and market it to 1 million other people to get them to actually benefit from the prototype. And then obviously I can leave work and go to FNB and get sponsorship. Just kidding, withdraw. But that's how powerful it is. It is innovative and you can create new things. But more importantly, you can help yourself to understand and address and then work towards solving your problem so that you never give up, so that you're effective, so that you get your experience, and so that you adapt to a problem-solving environment, which is called life, where you have to solve problems every day as soon as you are in life.
I always look at it, I worked in a solutions-driven company. I love that because that's important to me. I love when people point out the leaks, but I also love the people who are able to plug those leaks, because there is space in this world for those people. The positives, the pessimists, they all come together. And when you have knowledge with understanding, like the way you've unpacked this, I think it makes the best difference for any student getting out there in the world. Cameroon, this is where we leave it. Thank you so much for unpacking something so simple but so complex in design thinking. And that's exactly what this whole concept of Study Sesh is to unlock those nuggets, and you gave us so many today. I hope we get to catch up with you very soon. Thank you so much for being part of Study Sesh with Boston Broadcasts.